Namaschandikaya. Om Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadrakali Kapalini Durge Chama Shiva Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute. Jai Twang Devi Chamunde, Jai Bhuta Triharini, Jai Sarvagate Devi Kalratri Namostute. Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Matrirupena Sanstita. Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Dayarupena Sanstita. Namastasyai 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 Namo Namaha. Om Krim Kalikaya Namaha. Hey Mata. Namaste. Welcome to Vishwa Yoga. My name is Vishwa. Before I talk about Kali Kula today, let me quickly share the summary of this prayer. These verses or slokas are mainly from Durga Saptati. It means my obeisance to the Divine Mother, who is ever victorious as Jayanti, bestower of auspiciousness as Mangala, yet beyond the time as Kali, who is the controller of life and death as Bhadrakali, roaming with a garland of skulls as Kapalini, O the Invincible One, in the form of Durga, O Shiva, in the form of Mahakali. You are one with Lord Mahakal Shiva, the ever auspicious one. You are the controller and embodiment of forbearance as Shama and supporter of all sentient being as Dhatri. You are the source and residue of all energies. You are the ruler and power of time. You are the past, present, and future. I bow down to you. O Mother, please guide me to share this knowledge today. So today I will talk about Kali Kula and Kali Vidya of Shakta Tantra. In this episode, I will dive into its brief history, fundamentals, and method of practices, and will also connect dots to some of the previous videos. And one more time, I will end with a beautiful story and its spiritual significance. This episode may be a little bit longer than the previous ones, though my effort is to keep it short and simple for easier understanding. So, I'm assuming that you have watched my previous videos because it's related to the previous episodes. Though I will add some of the important links in the description of this video. So the exact time of origin of this tradition is unknown. The highest knowledge of this tradition was first shared by Adi Shakti or Divine Mother to her consort Lord Shiva. As per Tantric text, Devi formally initiates Shiva in Shakta tradition. So Adi Shakti becomes the guru and Shiva her student. This is the play of Shiva and Shakti. Sometimes Shiva is guru, sometimes Shakti is guru, sometimes they are lover, partner. So whatever you see, whatever it appears, is a play. If you look from duality perspective, then it is a play. In a non-dual aspect, they are just two aspects of the same coin. One transcendental reality that pervades every particle of this creation. There are over 30 different forms of Ma Kali, which is worshipped. But to keep it simple, on a high level, three major forms I will share later in this video. So first, what is meaning of Kali? In a simple word, the word Kali has two meanings. First, it means dark, in which all colors get dissolved or absorbed, which also means non-duality or void. Second, it comes from the word Kal, which means time. So the one who presides over time is Kali. Thus Kali is consciousness in motion. She presides over all stages of life. Mahanirvana Tantra says, just as all colors disappear in black, so all names and forms disappear in her. If you go in a scriptural text, the oldest reference is found in the Vedic text. For example, in Jaimini Brahmana, part of Samaveda, which mentions the story of Drigjiva, or a lady who has a long tongue, implying depiction of Kali. After that, the name Kali first appears in Atharvaveda, which is considered a Tantric Veda. In its Mandukopanishad, the word comes as Kali Karali, where Kali is one of the 7 tongues of fire or Agni. Thus, Kali is considered as the Shakti of fire, which has the power to transform matter into energy. This is the symbol of life as heat and light. Kali is the destroyer, like fire consumes everything, dissolves the material world back to the undifferentiated energy or Shakti. So, in Ratri Suktam of oldest text Rig Veda, Devi is said to be in the form of darkness or Ratri. In Durga Suktam, she is referred to as Jat Veda or Agni, from which Vedas are born. So according to Puranas, there are multiple references to the manifestation of Kali. In the story of Ma Sati, Devi Bhadrakali appeared from matted locks of Shiva's hair. In another story, Bhadrakali appeared from Shiva's third eye to kill a demon. The name Kali appears again in Durga Saptati, which is part of Markandeya Puran, in which Ma Durga transforms into Kali, or Kali is born from her third eye. Many masters say the original text of Kali Kula or Devi Kula has been lost, which was even older than Vedas. But for the sake of understanding, let's stick with what we have today. Similar to Shri Kula, I will focus on her 3 important aspects. The first one is her form. Ma Kali is the presiding deity of Kali Kula. As you know, there are many other forms of Devi in this Kula, such as Ma Tara, Bhairavi, etc. But Kali is worshipped in her formless aspect, as well as many different forms, including Yantra and her mantra, or Vidya, using the prescribed rituals according to the respective traditions. So let me talk about her major form first. Though in the picture or murti, she is naked. Thus she is called Digambari. This means she is unrestrained and boundless, free from all limitations and all illusions. She is beyond name and form and all conditional existence. So even in the form, Ma Kali, nakedness, signifies her absolute non-dual formless aspect or Nirguna Brahman. Thus, Many left-hand practices appear to be a reflection of her image. It is not restrained by any rules or boundaries, pure and impure, because everything is seen as mother or experienced as her manifestation. Most of her forms are considered tamasic. But when you visualize her in forms as Sagun Brahman, she is classified into three main forms, representing the three gunas with the different intensity of other gunas, including her white teeth representing Sattva guna and red tongue represents Rajas guna. So let me talk about her three forms now. The first one is called Dakshina or Shyama Kali. Here, Kali is portrayed in her gracious form as young and beautiful, gently smiling, standing with her right foot on the body of Shiva, who looks up at her adoringly. This merciful form is protective, benevolent, and a loving mother who liberates her children. She gives boons and dispels fear. Dakshina Kali is most popular form of Kali. This is the form in which the great master of recent times, Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa, worshipped her. He used to say, Kali appears fearful only when she is approached through relative forms of experience and worldly attachments. But when identities dissolve in the submission to her out of absolute faith and love, she appears as the very fountain of joy. The second form is known as Mahakali, Bhadrakali or Chandi, who is transformed from Durga to fight to protect her devotee against the evils. Thus, it is classified as a Rajasic form and also called Raksha Kali, the protectress. She is remembered deeply in the time of pandemic, epidemic, famine, earthquake, drought, and flood, etc. However, her third form is the most terrifying as Samshan Kali. She is worshipped at the cremation ground. This is the most terrifying form. This is the most tamasic and exceedingly frightening form of Ma Kali. She is the embodiment of the power of destruction. She resides in the cremation ground surrounded by corpses, jackals, and terrible female spirits. So, are you able to identify the difference in these forms? Here is the tip. If Kali steps out with her right foot and holds the sword in her left hand, she is Dakshina Kali. If she steps out with the left foot and holds the sword in her right hand, she is the terrible Samshan Kali. It is not recommended to worship Samshan Kali at home. So Dakshina Kali is the most popular form of Kali worshipped in Shakta households. In this form, she is usually shown with 4, 8, or 10 arms and 3 eyes. This form or rupam is balanced, Soumya, beautiful, and is considered a passive and motherly form of Kali, ideal for worship and asking for boons. These 3 forms also indicate the 3 paths of her worship, which I had already discussed in previous videos, the right hand path, middle path, and the left hand path respectively. Just to give you a contrast for understanding that in Sri Kula, Vidya Tantra mostly thrives, especially after great master Adi Shankara worshipped Sri Mata. Many Vedic masters entered into Sri Vidya tradition. But at the same time, to keep this practice socially accepted with Vedic norms, they also used the yogic or vegetarian substitute instead of the original 5 substances of the Panchmakaras, also known as 5 M's, which include alcohol, fish, meat, parched grain, and sex. Since the use of 5 M's was directed by Lord Shiva in the ritual, so cannot be eliminated completely. Thus, were substituted in some traditions. Thus, you will see in Sri Kula there are 3 major groups are aligning to the 3 systems I talked about in the previous video. One tries to make it more Vedic, one tries to make it more Tantric, and the other tries to bring a balance between the two. So depending on which tradition and lineage someone is connected to will emphasize that part or practice. However, having this exchange of knowledge among these groups resulted in a great body of knowledge in the form of commentary or text. But in Kali Kula tradition, both Vidya and Kaula Tantra thrives. It continues with original substances wherever it is needed with its literature, though many are not translated from their original texts. So based on the worship approach, you can map them to the respective 3 groups. Out of that, the 2 main, as you know, is the right-hand path and the left-hand path. Plus, there is also a pure devotional approach which is used from the Puranic tradition. Now, about the second aspect of Kali, which is her yantra. The basics of yantra I have already covered in one of the previous videos. This symbol represents the goddess Kali in her gross form, represented as the yantra, as a meditative symbol. This yantra is worshipped as per the lineage or master, very similar to Sri Vidya tradition or Sri Kula tradition, but following a slightly different ritual process. The names of Avarnas, Nityas, Yoginis, and deities will be different. Some masters explain the 5 circles represented as the 5 sheets or panchakoshas, and the lotus petals, the 8 major principles of Prakriti, including the 5 gross elements as Panch Mahabhuta and 3 inner instruments. The 15 corners formed from 5 inverted concentric triangles represent the 15 nityas as principles or tattvas. As you know them as Gyanendriyas, Karmendriyas, and Tanmatras. Since Kali is the form of the void but ornamented with skulls amid the 5-fold love yantra, her yoni is known to be the wheel of time, also called Kala Chakra. The red dot or bindu signifies blood or life, where Mahakali resides in the union with Mahakal. Different texts explain the meaning and significance in detail in many different ways with deep spiritual meaning, which is beyond the scope of this video. If Sri Yantra is considered very auspicious to keep at home or to meditate on it to fulfill all the desires, then meditating on Kali Yantra is said to be more powerful in protecting you from any negative effects on your health, wealth, misfortune, and overall well-being, including the effects caused by black magic. As you know, any yantra is worshipped using a mantra, which is called Vidya in Shakta tradition. So Kali is called the Adi Mahavidya. She is the first and the foremost among all Mahavidyas. It is said that Mahavidya tradition is centered on Ma Kali and her attributes. All the Mahavidyas, including the Siddhi Vidyas, the Samanya Vidyas and Upavidyas, are like a different forms of her manifestations. It is similar to the 10 avatars of Lord Vishnu. Kali alone symbolizes the fully awakened consciousness, and she alone reveals the ultimate truth. Masters say Kali Vidya Siddhi is the most difficult one. Many Kali sadhakas devote their entire life to receive her grace. So you can imagine its level of difficulty. Here, without going into much elaboration, just wanted to share some important Kali Vidyas or mantras. I have tried to keep the same format as Sri Vidya tradition for easier understanding and relating. Though in each Kula, there are many more mantras than what you see here. This is just for conceptual understanding. Since I have already covered Vidya Tantra basics in one of the previous videos, so now I will cover some Kula Tantra practices. Please keep in mind, I will only share that can be shared publicly. There is a great value to keep these practices private, including the practices received from a qualified master. If you remember, I talked about Cremation school in Kashmir Shaivism. I shared some information about Kali Kula's master in Krama lineage. Kali worship existed much before Kashmir Shaivism. Kaula school technically evolved in the eastern part of India around Kamakhya temple, but then got also adopted in Kashmir Shaivism. Kaula practices detail can be found in the work of great master Abhinav Gupta called Tantrasara and Tantraloka. If you remember, I shared a list of masters in Kaula lineage. However, most people are unaware of the fact that there are multiple branches under the umbrella of Kaula school. So let me share some of its major branches here without diving deep into it. So Kaula school is said to have 6 major branches based on the 64 key tantric texts. Each branch emphasizes certain texts and practices. One focuses on ritualistic worship, including yogic and meditative practices. Another uses Panchamakhara practices, which include genital worship, intercourse rituals during Chakra Puja. Another one uses the skull and cremation ground practices, animal sacrifices. Some practitioners stay naked, and some use dark practices. Some use necromancy practices. Some combine these practices. So you can see the variations. If you will study Kaula Tantra, about 70% of the Kaula practices are considered left-hand path practices. Thus, for many, it gives an impression that Kaula is a left-hand path school only. But the other 30% are the major Shakta practitioners who practice using the right-hand path. Those branches following the left-hand path of Kaula school say that freedom does not depend on the set of rules, caste, or class system, and in predefining what is right or wrong, pure or impure for realizing the truth. Therefore, sex, alcohol, touching dead bodies, intoxication, animal sacrifices, etc. are accepted practices. This is where Tantra expands its boundary and becomes an independent path and does not follow orthodox Vedic rituals and rules. Kaula masters advise disciples to look within, to the places where good behavior is determined not by etiquette, but by what you truly are. So let me move into some of the common practices here. First, I will share right hand path practices. So if you are not yet ready to worship Kali or not in tune with her temperament, you must refrain from it. Else, the result may disturb your life. So choose the form of the deity or divine mother which resonates with you, such as Ma Durga or any other form which goes with your temperament. Puranic or devotional practices are different but easier than tantric practices. Devotional practices are the most common practice which anyone can do it easily and safely. It requires the least guidance, like driving a car at a low speed, and you have no set destination to reach. It's just like giving an attendance in the school. But in tantric practice, you require precise guidance to reach the desired destination, to observe your progress or success, as well as protection if needed when a mistake happens. It is like driving a car at a very high speed to get to the desired destination fast but safely. As per Durga Saptati, Ma Kali manifested from the third eye of Ma Durga during the fight with demon Chandamund and Raktabij. Durga gave Kali another name called Chandi. Ma Kali is the mighty aspect of Ma Durga. So if you are interested in Durga worship, the simplest and safest option is to start chanting her name, or 108 names daily called Ashtottara Namavali. Or if you want a shorter version, just 7 slokas from Durga Saptati or Devi Mahatma called Saptsloki Durga. Or a longer version, follow the comprehensive steps detailed in the text. You can also find different mantras for different situations and need. This is the first text I used to worship Divine Mother. Now it's up to her that in which form she connects to you or guides you. Ma Durga can be invoked through either Kula, Shri Kula or Kali Kula, but technically she belongs to Kali Kula. But if you love Kali, or she is your deity or Ishtadevi and want to worship her, then for most householders, the form of Dakshina Kali is recommended. The only way you can worship the Divine Mother is to be her child. Because if Kali shows up and you are not ready, even in meditative state, even in dream, you will be scared to death. But as her child, your mother will never scare you. At least that's my experience is. Again, the simplest and safest way to worship Kali is to chant her name or 108 names every day. But if you like more detailed practice, then use the text Brihad Tantra Sara, originally written by Krishnananda in Bengali. Do not get confused with similar sounding text I mentioned, Tantra Sara, written by Avinav Gupta long time ago. Krishnananda was a great Siddha born around mid-1500 in a hardcore Vaishnava family who also followed Advaita Vedanta philosophy. With the blessing of Ma Kali, he wrote this book compiling 150 authoritative texts. Until today, it is considered the most authoritative manual for Kali Kula practice. He came up with iconography, mantra, yantra, nyasa, theology, and related practices to worship Dakshina Kali. Kali Puja usually starts on a new moon or Amavasya. The great master Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa was initiated into Tantra by Bhairavi Brahmani. He used all 64 tantric techniques to invoke her, though he was one of the great devotees of Ma Dakshina Kali and was also initiated into Advaita Vedanta by Guru Totapuri. Many people are unaware of the fact that Sri Ramakrishna was also initiated into Christianity and Islam. To your surprise, he realized both Jesus and Muhammad in just few days. He regarded Jesus as the great yogi. Based on his experience, he proclaimed that all religions lead to the same God or one source. Let me share one more thing here. In the words of Sri Ramakrishna, Divine Mother first manifested as light and then in her form. He used to talk to her often. If you get a chance to read about him, you will find that he answered many complex questions so beautifully that most people can easily understand them. However, the whole world knows his great disciple Swami Vivekananda, especially after the Chicago speech in 1893. He formally introduced the knowledge of yoga and Vedanta to the West and inspired millions around the world. I consider Swami Vivekananda as my first spiritual master. His books sowed the seed of spirituality with rational thinking at a very early age and answered many of my curious questions. Especially reading about his blissful state of samadhi, I deeply desire to experience it for myself. This led me onto the path of yoga and began to meditate on the image of Divine Mother. The story says, before Vivekananda accepted Ramakrishna as his master, he used to ask one question to every master he met: have you seen God? And most of them were not able to answer clearly. But when he asked the same question to Ramakrishna, he smiled at him and said, yes, like I see and speak to you. Later, when the time came, he made Swami Vivekananda speak to Divine Mother directly. If you get a chance, read this story. Swami Vivekananda never taught Kali worship into public, but Advaita Vedanta, as he believed that this is what world needs today, and Mother has assigned this job to him. But in private, he worshipped Mother Kali as well as he taught to his disciples. Okay, so let me change the gear now. This path requires that you must be fit for it. For example, any of the left-hand path Kaula practices is not part of your temperament, it is not for you. This is a reason why it is called warrior path or Ved sadhana. Kali Puja is also known as Nishi Puja, which means practices that are done at night or in darkness, in secluded places. The main purpose is to get over your fear, which is deeply embedded within us. In this path, there are some lower level as well as higher level practices. Some people establish contacts with different types of spirits or beings such as Yakshini, Apsara, Yogini, Bhutas, Pretas. This is a lower form of practice for powers or siddhi for material benefit, in which you are not really connecting to the deity or Mahavidya for higher spiritual gains, rather a spirit or lower forms which are more bound to this realm, the earthly realms, and can be easily contacted for your goal. But some of these practices are not recommended because you may have to pay a price. which is not going to be very good for you. Remember, in Mahavidya practice, you invoke real deities such as Kali, Tara, Bhairavi, etc. If she appears to you or communicates to you in some way, a shift or real change you will experience immediately. The majority of people worship Kali using complete or partial tantric procedure with various offerings as guided by their teacher. Some may include animal sacrifice called Bali, or simply fire ceremony or home after mantra sadhana, or a combination of these where the goddess is considered the supreme controller of the astral realm, mistress of all ethereal entities, and the ultimate guide, destination, and bestower of all the powers or siddhis. Broadly speaking, some Bij mantras, which include Hrim, Hum, and Fat, are usually alluring, powerful, seductive, and forbidding. On the other hand, mantras with Shrim and Klim are beneficent as well as sexually charging, but the practice of any Bij mantra is not recommended without initiation. There have been many masters and lineage in the Kali Kula tradition. Some of the tradition I have already mentioned before. Most notable ones are the tradition of Jnananetra or Shivanandanath, Meenanath or Matsyendranath. I have listed many others in case you might be interested. Having said that, now let me talk about the famous practice which has become synonymous with Tantra, especially in the Western world today, and that is sexual practices, commonly known as tantric sex. Remind you, in reality, this is one of the Panchamakara practice called Maithuna. As per Tantra, besides pleasure, healing, and procreation, sexual practices are used for spiritual development. As Swami Satyanand Saraswati said, in ordinary sex, the experience is lost even before one can deepen it. Once you master certain techniques of Tantra, it leads to the deepest experience, and this experience can become continuous in your daily life. The silent centers of the brain get awakened and start to function. On this path, practitioners believe that awakening of Kundalini is possible through interaction of man and woman. It is like the process of fission and fusion, if you relate to the modern physics. Man and woman represent positive and negative energy. On the mental level, they represent time and space. Ordinarily, these forces stand opposite. During sexual interaction, they come towards the center, and an explosion occurs, and matter manifests. This is the basic theme of tantric sex. In tantric sex, ejaculation should be controlled so that the energy which moves outwards is turned inward to the higher chakras. Only when energy is maintained, the sexual act culminates into explosion of energy. If energy fails, ejaculation takes place. So, to get there, the first thing is to learn how to approach sex in tantric way, which applies to both men and women. Tantric sex is not an ordinary monkey sex in which people just simply jump in and jump out. In Tantra, you learn some tantric methods and yogic practices to change that old habit and pattern and learn the new ones you learn from a teacher or practitioner during initiation or at the beginner level. As you move up, it requires a certain level of mantra practice or japa to invoke Bhairava and Bhairavi. Once a student attains a certain level of experience, then you may get invited into a Chakra Puja ceremony under the guidance of a guru called Chakreshwara. This is a group ceremony, usually done at a private place or secluded temple. Remember Kali Yantra and its lotus petals, and each couple taking a seat as Bhairava and Bhairavi on each petal, forming a circle with Guru sitting at the center. It is also referred to as Yogini Chakra or Bhairavi Chakra. In this ceremony, the sacred space is created according to Kula rituals, including food, perfume, drink, incense, and other ritual accessories, including Panchamakara items. During the Chakra Puja, each participant anoints and worships the actual yoni of the woman, as you do in the Yantra or Chakra Puja in an orthodox way. Keep in mind, here you and your partner are not you, but in the state of Bhairav and Bhairavi. This is not an ordinary practice or ordinary sex for pleasure or procreation. This is the place of Ananda Bhairava and Tripura Bhairavi. Remember the form I mentioned in Sri Kula video, which resides at the root or Mooladhara chakra. Here, Maithuna or sexual union ritual is performed to experience the explosion of that energy with a focus on the Kundalini. It is purely done for spiritual experience, not for worldly pleasure. In each stage, different mantra is used to worship the Nityas, Yoginis, guardian deities, and the Devi with Shiva. The comprehensive ritual lasts for almost the whole night. This is the high-level summary of this secret ceremony. More details are only shared by a qualified teacher to an initiated student. To give you the contrast, the Western Tantra is a mixed version of the beginner level of this Kaula practice, combined with Buddhist Tantra, along with some practices borrowed from other systems, mainly towards pleasure and healing. The next practice is cremation ground practices. This is truly an extreme practice. This is called extreme path or Ati Marg. Kali dwells where the dissolution takes place. So in this path, practitioners worship Kali in the cremation ground, where the Panch Mahabhuta or 5 elements are dissolved, preferably at the dead of night or the waning moon or Amavasya. In terms of devotion and worship, this denotes the dissolving of attachments, anger, lust, and other binding emotions, feelings, and ideas. Only a brave one who dares to take up such practice chooses to do so. So the initiated practitioner starts the practice on a specific day, which is generally on a new moon or Amavasya, while consuming ritually consecrated alcohol, while being accompanied by his Bhairava or Bhairavi or partner, or a group of practitioners get together and do the Chakra Puja in a cremation ground, setting to harness the greater collective power of invoking Shamshan Kali. Many cremation ground rituals are designed to take the seeker beyond fear, shame, and disgust. This includes Aghora practices as well, which I have previously talked about. Some practitioners may use the necromancy practices to gain control over some spirit, which includes the Shabar mantra in the local dialect. Some use dead bodies, intoxication to do special practices. It is said that these practices are very dangerous. The slightest error or lack of nerves would leave the seeker mad or suicidal. No halfway measures, no second chance. Those who are psychologically unfit yet attempt these practices out of false bravado or overestimation of one's capabilities leads to self-destruction. Given the extreme nature of this practice, if one succeeds, but many get reduced to complete wreck. So it is simply not advised to take this path without the guidance of a qualified master. In India and Nepal, many people can see these practitioners roaming around in important places like Varanasi or near the Tantric temples or Shakti Pithas and cremation grounds. Some come to do lower level Shakti sadhanas to gain powers from spirits. Most Indians, due to lack of clarity and lack of understanding, consider only these practitioners are tantric. So you must be wondering, how does this work? Please keep in mind, in either path and kula, a deity is bound by mantra and its discipline. If you invite her with devotion, dedication, and patience using mantra japa in prescribed manner through its ritual, there is a reasonable chance that the deity will show up and give you the result. Sometime the deity initially may show up using someone else to test you. For example, it can be another human, even a dog or other creature. So respect the entity during your process. Sometimes hurdles, temptations, and attractions are purposely created by the deity for your test. Remember, she is a Jaganmohini, enchanter of the universe. Many practitioners, gurus, masters fall into that temptation. But once you pass the test, as masters say, the deity starts to live within you. You and your deity are not different anymore. The journey starts from duality and ends in non-duality. For others, you may look like the same ordinary person, but you do not remain the same. It is like milk has churned into butter, will never become milk again. You become the living Shiva and Shakti. On the other hand, it looks all attractive to hear about these practices, power, pleasure, and enlightenment, etc. Many people just get excited about it to learn immediately to their Ishta Devata or God or Goddess, but very few can follow the path. The moment people come to know about the sacrifices and disciplines they will have to make or maintain for the practice, they back off. All the excitement goes away. No one wants to leave their comfort zone. So if you are interested in reading its scriptures or digest commentaries, here is the list of major texts. The key text of this tradition is called Kali Hridayam, or the heart of Kali. Durga Saptati is also known as Devi Mahatma and Kalki Puran. A bigger list I have already mentioned in a separate video. I hope this gives you an idea about the fundamentals of Kali Kula and its practices, including left, right, and center. Now let me share the story about the manifestation of Ma Kali from Ma Durga and then its spiritual significance. This story is based on Markandeya Puran, also mentioned in Devi Bhagavad Puran. The manifestation of Ma Durga and Kali is shared in detail, but I will summarize it. The story says the Divine Mother manifests on the prayer of gods to help them to kill demons. There are several demons mentioned in the text. If you take it literally, no problem. But spiritually, each demon is within each of us. I will explain its meaning after the literal story. So if you remember, I already talked about the first set of demons called Madhu and Katava in a Devi Kula video, and their fight with Lord Vishnu and how Devi came to rescue. In this video, I will talk about few more demons which caused the manifestation of Ma Durga and Kali. This story will sound very similar to the previous one, but with a twist. Most of these demons worship Lord Brahma, the creator, who grants them a boon that no god, man or animal can kill them. They intentionally do not include women, as they thought a woman can never be so strong to kill them. So the next demon is Mahishasur, who becomes so powerful after the boon that he kicked out the king of gods called Indra from his palace. Helpless God came to Trinity for the help. So Trinity got together to create an invincible woman. They prayed to the Divine Mother and projected their energy collectively with the intention for her to manifest. This was the manifestation of Shakti or Parvati as Ma Durga. She fights with Mahishasur. Mahisha means buffalo and Asura means demon. He was finally killed by Devi. Thus, Devi is also known as Mahishasur Mardani, the one who killed Mahishasur. After many years passed, two demon brothers, Shumb and Nishumb, received a similar boon from Brahma. Shumb was elder and the king. He kicked out Indra again and other gods from their place. In his army, many other powerful demons were there, such as Dhumralochan, Chandamund, Raktabij, etc. Raktabij had a special boon that if his blood drops on the battleground, from each drop, a duplicate Raktabij will be born with the same boon. So the story repeats. The helpless god prays to Divine Mother. On hearing their prayer, goddess Parvati took a very beautiful form called Ambika, and later during the war, in a state of anger, she created Kali from her third eye, who first killed Chand and Mund. Thus, Ambika gave her name Chandika. This is how Ma Kali first manifested in the form of Chandi. But her fight with Raktabij is more famous. It is said that he was the Mahishasur in the previous birth. To kill Raktabij, Kali enlarged her tongue and mouth and started to gulp his army. And if any blood started to drop from him, she drank and did not let it fall on the earth. Thus finally Raktabij was killed by Ma Kali. In some other stories, it is mentioned that after killing Raktabij and most of his army, angry goddess Kali went on to kill and destroy everything. Thus begins the dance of death, and no one can intervene except Lord of Dance, and that is Lord Shiva. Thus, to pacify Kali, Lord Shiva lay down on her way like a corpse to absorb the shock of her terrifying dance. Once she saw that she stepped on her husband out of embarrassment or lajja, her tongue came out and she calmed down. And that's the picture you see. So Devi killed all the demons and returned to Shiva as Parvati. Now the spiritual significance or moral of this story. I will focus on just a few characters to keep it short. The name Indra comes from the word Indriya, which means senses. So here Indra means our mind, who presides over our senses. Mahishasur signifies our rage and lust, which is so powerful that once it overpowers our senses, drains our mind completely. You cannot remove any of these emotions completely. They are very powerful energy, but they can be channelized and transformed. On the other hand, Rakt Bij represents our desires. When one desire is fulfilled, so many new desires arises. It never ends. So, does it mean that we should not have desires? No. But we need to have a control. Ma Kali represents here the strict discipline with aggression to control desires and cut the head in the form of ego. Now, the state of Kali destroying everything is explained in many different ways. In one interpretation, it represents our state of being under the influence of anger with extreme power. We usually get disconnected from our true self or Shiva. In that state, we begin the destruction of our own world. The moment we acknowledge who we are and what we are doing, the same energy transforms into a creative force with compassion and transforms our life. So it is important to have both Shiva and Shakti in our life, through which we acknowledge these demons within us and then channelize the energy or Shakti to transform ourselves. So this was the short video on Kali Kula to convey the fundamental concepts. I hope it was useful for you. In my next video, I will dive into Shiva Shakti Tantra philosophy. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Namaste. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the information, please subscribe, like and share so that everyone else can also enjoy this.